Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Texan Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. They specialize in making their facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. Not only that, there are no move-in fees and there are no visitation restrictions. They are located near I-635 in Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more information, you can call 469-400-7650. That is Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Brian Murphy and Devin Hassan. On today's podcast, we're going to preview the second round of the high school football playoffs, talk about some of the big matchups within our neck of the woods, including a potential second round scare for Allen. Maybe?
Dare we say it?
Some big matchups out in Frisco ISD, but obviously we're going to start with our game of the week as voted on by you, the readers, and I guess I just gave it away that it wasn't either Allen Rockwall or matchup involving Frisco ISD, although we did have one game involving a Frisco school that initially set the pace in the game of the week poll. It looked like Frisco Lone Star and Lufkin was going to make an early surge.
And enter Mustang Nation.
And then Sachse woke up.
Lone Star's pretty good on Twitter, so I thought they were, had a stranglehold on things, and we saw that yesterday. We were talking about it. I was like, all right, well, getting ready to talk Lone Star Lufkin most of the podcast. And then, like you said, Sachse, they always win.
All it takes is for the Mustang Nation Twitter feed to get a hold of the game of the week poll.
What's it called? Mustang Gang? Or
Mustang Gang. Mustang Nation, yeah.
Okay.
Between them and Let Nation, that's the two internet poll kings.
And they will put a game of the week poll in a chokehold pretty swiftly. So nevertheless, Sachse versus Waco Midway is your game of the week. This one goes down 7 o'clock Friday out at Vernon Newsom Stadium out in Mansfield. Sachse 8-3 versus Midway 9-1. Sachse looking to build off of a very redemptive performance against Plano East last week, a 35-25 victory, avenging a non-district loss to the Panthers. And as I mentioned on Monday's podcast, I think really kind of the first true signs of just this turnaround that Sachse has enjoyed over the second half of the regular season. Obviously, we've talked at length about the 0-3 start and just the struggles there, just the inconsistencies at quarterback. So to be able to pick up a win of that significance, not just over a program that with the kind of pedigree that Plano East traditionally has, but against a team that took it to you pretty well earlier on in the season. Really, I think that kind of coming full circle and showing Sachse just how far that they've come.
Yeah, I certainly think so. And we alluded to this a little bit on the podcast on Monday. The move of Derrick Rose from wide receiver to quarterback and the stability he's provided just allows them to stick with their game plan. They come in with a plan of attack, and whereas they might have panicked a little bit with some inexperience, with some youth there early in the season, they're able to stick with it. And even in a game that was 7-7, even in a game that they trailed 13-7 in the second half, they were able to stick to their guns, and it paid dividends for them as the game progressed.
So with Sachse and what they were able to do against Plano East, it was my first look at Sachse since that game against East, and I caught the very tail end of the last game that they've lost now, is they've won now 8 straight. And what stuck out to me is that it's a very they don't ask Rose to do a ton as far as moving the ball through the air. It was a very very efficient passing attack. It was one where a lot of stuff predicated off of the play action, rolling out Rose and just hitting guys on the near the sidelines, and it helped convert a lot of third downs early in that game. That was one thing that really impressed me about Sachse, was the job that they did executing on third down, converting a lot of third and long situations that perhaps earlier in the season that might have been a bit tougher to come by. And then as the game wore on, you really got to see Rose's mobility into the equation and the job that he and their stable of running backs. It's just it's kind of just pick your poison as far as which one's going to be the one that kind of carries the paves the way as the game goes on. And it was, Derrick Rose and Torrey Washington helped salt that game away. And also, Sachse's defense has just been so consistent all game long, and they were once again just in rare form taming what has been a very, very explosive Plano East offense.
And that's their identity on offense that they established during the course of the season. Torrey Washington kind of took over the lead role in terms of tailbacks last week, but Miles Nash has been filled that spot before. KJ Williams, as a team, they're averaging 6.4 yards per carry. So they set the tone on the ground. And you mentioned Derrick Rose picking his spots for the air. He averages 20.2 yards per completion. So when they do go to the air, Trent Dean and Cameron Cromer and Miles Nash and Chase Cromer, these guys are making big plays on the outside. And Derrick Rose has nice touch in a deep ball, but a lot of those big plays too are getting those guys out in space and letting them do show off their playmaking abilities. And the defense I thought was really impressive. We kind of wondered how they would kind of fill that void left by Hunter Spears, their outstanding defensive lineman, and Anthony Enyonu, is that how you say it?
Enyonu is how I believe I tried to pronounce it on Monday.
Yes, who you told me that Coach Behrens was talking about how he found him in PE class.
Okay, I've heard about this. So I have some Sachse sources. I'm a Sachse alum. I know some people on that coaching staff. I heard about this kid. I didn't know his name. He was discovered in PE class. Coach Behrens may have told you the same story, but this is so funny because I literally just heard this 2-3 days ago. He went up to dunk a basketball and he dunked it, and then an assistant coach, I don't know who it was, when it saw him and saw his physicality and his length and everything, and saw him, he said, "Hey, a real man dunks it just standing straight up and dunks it with two hands." And he did it. He tried it again and did it. And next thing you know, they have him on the team. And that's really funny that y'all bring him up.
Yeah, and this was just his 4th game on varsity. And he responds in the playoffs with 8 tackles and 3 sacks.
Wow.
So, talk about breaking onto the scene, in style.
You wonder what would have happened if he didn't dunk that basketball off of 2 feet, if that was the kind of the deal breaker.
I guess so, yeah.
It's like you didn't see this guy in the hallway.
Coaches apparently just need to scour the PE ranks a bit more to.
Like, how did he never play sports before? At all? It's crazy.
Those are always the most impressive stories. Just the kids that just you find out of nowhere that they're basically having to learn on the fly, and then an instance like that, a playoff game, you're having to fill a void left by a Notre Dame commit, and he's able to go through and because Plano East's offensive line is no joke, and he's able to get 3 sacks. And 3 sacks! I wonder how many players, period, have got 3 sacks this season for Sachse in a single game. Impressive stuff from Sachse as they continue to look the part. I wonder how when all's said and done, how we'll look back on this team relative to what they had last year, when a bit more high profile in terms of the Division I talent, but a program that's at the very least 1 win away from matching the success that they had last year.
It's a different storyline in the sense that team last year came in loaded with expectations. They had, I think 16 returning starters, and they were high-profile Division I recruits all over the field. And, again, they were more of the high-octane, hey, we're going to score in 4 plays or less, come and stop us. And that did allow them to establish school history and making it to the regional semifinals. Whereas this team, again, has plenty of star power of its own, but not that same identity that they had to cultivate over the first half of the season. So I'm not going to say it's a more rewarding journey for the coaching staff, because every season is different. Every group of kids is special in their eyes. But I think just looking at it from an outsider's point of view, this has been a little bit more impressive, because I think this is a group that's kind of had to come together more as a team. As the season progressed, they had to overcome some adversity with that 0-3 start. They've had to overcome some adversity with injuries, and so it's turning into what could be a really special group.
What do you think the mood of the team is now versus last year going into that second round game? Because they had never been past the second round. Going into that game against Rockwall, they barely beat them at Allen Eagle Stadium, and then they go into the third round and lose to Pflugerville, Hendrickson, or whatever. What's that like going into this game? Are they expecting to break that record, that playoff record, and go to the fourth round, or are they just kind of happy where they're at right now based off of how they started the season?
I think they're taking it, the cliche, taking it a game at a time, whereas I think last year's group was already eyeing that third round
or even further,
halfway through the regular season.
Yeah.
But I think this group is also supremely confident. I think that they've grown so much in the last 2 months, and last Friday's win over Plano East, only built on that.
There's obviously another side to this matchup, though, so let's at least throw some love to Waco Midway, a team that obviously is not in our neck of the woods, well south out in the Waco area, obviously. A program that is, much like last week when we were talking about an East Dallas County school going up against a team that was playing for a state championship. Midway fell off a 1-win short. They advanced to the 6A Division II state title game last year. Different team this season, obviously. The big one being the graduation of their quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, who was arguably the best quarterback in the entire state last season. But looking at this Midway team and how, they started off the year on the rockiest of notes. They got hammered by Euless Trinity 37-7 in the first game of the season. Had a real tough time struggling with turnovers. I want to say they committed 5 in that game alone. And then, the following week they were able to get a win, albeit, not the most convincing one, just 13-10 over what wound up being a 5-win Killeen team. But, Midway has righted the ship, and they're rolling pretty good now. They're, that loss to Trinity is their only one on the season, so they've won 9 straight. They've won those 9 games by an average of almost 29 points. Devon, they paid a visit to Mesquite and really squared off against Mesquite last week in the first round, and were able to dealt the Skeeters. What was it?
48-13. Yeah, it was tough matchup for Mesquite. They were hanging tough early. It was a 13-6 game in the first quarter, in the first half, I should say. And then Midway hits them with a late touchdown midway through the second quarter, and then a pick 6 by Travis Hodges, and that all of a sudden it's a 27-6 game at halftime, and it kind of got away. But Midway they've got a much different identity. We talked about Sachse's identity being different. You mentioned with Trey Mordecai graduating. Well, this team, James Fulbright was a great running back last season. He rushed for 1,800 yards. Yeah. Well, he's already he went for 211 in the regular season finale against Belton. He goes for 153 last week against Mesquite. So he's closing in right there on 2,000 yards for the season. That's going to be a tough matchup for the Sachse front. Nick Jimenez doesn't put up huge numbers all the time. He did have 256 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half against Belton, so he is capable, and they do have some capable receivers in Deontay Thomas and Will Nixon. But the matchup that really interests me is we've talked about that Sachse front and how deep and how talented it is, and how instrumental they were against Plano East. Them and their chore of slowing down James Fulbright, I think, is probably going to be the biggest storyline of this game.
So, Midway, a program that perennially prides itself on being strong in the trenches, and that certainly does appear to be the case. You mentioned what the offense can do. Defensively, some guys to watch out for. Linebacker Marcus Johnson has 128 tackles on the season, averaging almost 13 a game. And
he was banged up last week, so he didn't play full time, but reports I heard he's supposed to be pretty much back to full strength is what I understand.
Braden Ensley, a standout pass rusher for them. He's got 4 sacks on the season. You mentioned Travius Hodges is one of the names to watch in the secondary. Parker Null has 3 interceptions for them. Xavier Abalos, there's no way I pronounced that last name correctly. He has a couple picks and 6 pass deflections, so there is plenty of talent overall, and it has kind of bore itself out with the way that Midway has righted the ship, looking like just a normal your normal awesome Midway team.
Yeah, it's a very intriguing area round matchup, second round matchup, because you got one team that's won 9 in a row, one team that's won 8 in a row. They both seem to be peaking at the right time, so Friday should be a lot of fun.
Obviously, though, we can't go without mentioning that Sachse is going to be a little bit shorthanded in the first half of this game, because obviously, as thrilling as that 35-25 win over Plano East was last week, it did not come without a few casualties. Because for those who have not heard, and how could anybody have not heard by this point, but there was a fight late in that game that resulted in 8 ejections, including 3 players on Sachse. And per UIO rules, those 3 players will be forced to miss the first half of this game against Midway, and some notable losses, no doubt. So, how do you kind of see this? These absences, at least for a half. Just how does that kind of, just impact things just overall for Sachse?
It's certainly a blow. Especially when you have a couple senior leaders mixed in with that group. But that's what you spend all season building depth for. You don't know what's going to happen from week to week. A lot of times you're building depth for it from an injury perspective. If one of your guys go down, you need the others to step up. In this case, unfortunately, it's a suspension. I guess if you want to look at it as a positive, it is a 1-half suspension, so they are eligible to come back in the second half. But in the meantime, getting off to a fast start is important against this Midway team. And so you're going to have, just like we talked about in the defensive line last week with other guys stepping up, you're going to have some of that. You're going to have guys like Jordan Brooks and James White, who have been consistent all season long, but maybe they have to take on more of a leadership role, at least in that first half. But Sachse has been able to find people to do that all season long, whether it be in the secondary, whatever unit it's been. So we'll see if we can continue to do that, and hope from their sake, hopefully it doesn't have it doesn't impact the game, because you would hate to see a game of this magnitude, be decided because we had a couple guys out in the first half. I mean, I don't think that'll be the case, but it's just up to Sachse to overcome that hurdle.
Who are we picking for this one, gentlemen?
I'm going with my alma mater. I can't pick against Sachse.
Have you picked against Sachse yet this year?
No, of course not. And I refuse to. Unless they're playing maybe Allen. We'll see.
Well, you have picked against Allen already this season.
Yeah, by accident. That was an accident.
Devin, how about you?
I have Sachse as well. This is a tough choice because we don't get to see Waco Midway on a consistent basis. Obviously, I had done some prep work for them last week going up against Mesquite, and they obviously were impressive. Just following along with what they were able to do. But I still have Sachse. I just think the Sachse team is rounding into form at just the right time. I think they'll be able to overcome the adversity of missing a few of those guys in the first half, and it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the wire. But I think I'd take Sachse moving on and matching the longest journey in the playoffs and in school history.
I'd be curious how many times during these past 8 wins has Sachse ever had to play from a potential double-digit deficit? Were they ever down double digits against Wylie? Wylie?
That was the first game of that streak. And you could really kind of say that second half is where they turned the corner because they were one half away from going 0-4. And rallied against what was then a winless Wylie team, but now a Wylie team that's 2 rounds deep in the playoffs. Turned out to be a very good win. After that, outside of that, no, I would have to go back and check. I'm 95% sure they never trailed up until last week against Plano East.
I'm going with Midway in this one, and it's just basically boiled down to I don't know. I tend to always defer to the team that I feel like is better fortified up front. In a lot of these matchups where a lot of things might be fairly even on paper, that's kind of a tiebreaker for me. I feel like Midway might have the advantage up there, and I do think that there is going to be some side effect to those Sachse players having to sit out the first half, especially in the middle of the defense and whatnot. So, I decided to go with Midway in this one. Plus, just being kind of the more just proven program, the more battle tested and playoff, whatever cliche you want to apply to it. But yes, I mean, Midway certainly is very well accustomed to this phase of the game, whereas Sachse's still trying to kind of realize what it means to consistently win deep in the playoffs. Yeah. So I just defer to Midway on this one, and 4-2 in favor of Midway. So ironically enough, I get the 2 Sachse picks on the round table for this one. So yes, myself, Justin Thomas, Kendrick Johnson, Taylor Ragland, siding with Waco Midway in this matchup. Brian, Devin, going with Sachse. So that is a look at least our reader-voted game of the week, Sachse versus Waco Midway. Once again, that one is Friday, 7 o'clock out in Mansfield at Vernon Newsom Stadium. Obviously, though, we still got to shine that student-athlete spotlight out on Sachse, as we've just been talking about. One of the key pieces in their turnaround was obviously the play of quarterback Derrick Rose, and we had a chance to talk with Derrick on kind of making the move from receiver to quarterback and just Sachse's mindset heading into the biggest game of the season on Friday. And we will see what Derrick had to say after a word from this sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD Painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, or exterior, ATD Painting has you covered. They have 4 locations in the Metroplex, including Plano and Louisville. You can call 972-694-8888 for more information, or you can visit their website at atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah, this is Devin Hassman with the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. We are out here at Sachse High School discussing our game of the week as voted on you by the readers. That is Sachse versus Waco Midway, 7 p.m. Friday at Mansfield's Vernon Newsom Stadium. I'm joined by Sachse quarterback Derrick Rose. Derrick, appreciate you taking a couple minutes to talk to us today.
No problem.
As far as I wanted to touch real briefly on last week, obviously the intensity is always ramped up in the playoffs. You guys in an intense game last week were able to pull out a 35-25 victory over Plano East. Given the fact that they were a team that had beat you earlier in the year, is there a little something extra gratifying about being able to kind of gain a measure of revenge and knock them out of the playoffs?
It was just our mentality was way better this time than it was last time, and it was playoff time, so we had to come out with a win. That's all that mattered. Want to go home.
Now, I talked to Bryce Robinson about this a couple weeks ago. As far as being a senior leader, you guys get off to that 0-3 start. I know that's not something that's familiar in these kind of in Sachse in recent history. As a senior leader, kind of what do you tell your teammates, and how did y'all get back on the right track?
I told them it was just preseason. It's on district. It really didn't matter. So we got 7. We went 7-0 in district, and playoff time, we came harder than ever.
Okay. And as far as one of the big reasons for the turnaround was your move to quarterback. Now, you'd had some quarterback experience in the past, right?
Yes, sir.
In past years. Mm-hmm. So kind of take me through that process. Is this something that you've been had you been working on it in quarterback in practice? I mean, had the coaches come to you? Kind of take me through how that decision got made to make that move official.
Well, before last year, my junior year, a coach always told me be prepared because eventually I was always going to come back to quarterback just in case anything happened. And I just stayed ready. I was prepared, and good things happen.
Okay. Well, and you know, you're being recruited as a wide receiver. I know you got several offers as a to play wide receiver at the next level. Were you concerned at all that moving positions, you know, this is kind of your senior showcase season, that moving positions in the middle of the year would hurt your recruitment at all?
Yes and no. I know I can go to college for quarterback too, but I really like receiver, and I just want to see what happens. Like, I might have both. I might just stay with receiver, see what happens.
Yeah, you get to show off a new skill set then for the scouts. Well, and that being said, I know there's a different mindset when you're going to be handling the ball every snap. You know, you're going to be sometimes handing it off, sometimes running it yourself, sometimes throwing the ball. How have you kind of changed your mindset in how you approach the game being a quarterback?
It's kind of like being a receiver, like, because I understand what my receivers are going through, like how they want the ball, and then same with the running backs. So I just had the same mindset as all my teammates. So I kind of know what to do. Like, I'm pretty fluent with it.
Okay, and talking to Coach Bears, you know, we alluded to the 0-3 start earlier. He said, yeah, it was tough. We played 3 tough teams, and our confidence was a little bit shaken, but we got it back on track. Now that you guys have won 8 in a row, what's the confidence level like with this team right now?
We feel like we can go far. Like, and I know we can. We just got to keep going. That's all that matters. Have the same mentality.
Well, let's talk about the task at hand. Waco Midway. I'm sure you've had a chance to see film on them the last several days. What's kind of your current impressions on the team you're going to be facing out there on Friday night?
Oh, they're an excellent team. They're very disciplined. What I'm looking at, like, they figure their right holes. They know where to go. They're just disciplined. That's all I know about them. Discipline.
Well, $1 million question. Obviously, y'all want to get out there with a W on Friday. What are the keys to victory?
Playing harder. We lost a couple of our star players, so we gotta play amazing first half until they come back. But we should be good as long as we just keep playing hard and having the same mentality as last game.
Fantastic. Well, that's about a wrap here at Sachse High School. Derrick Rose, thank you for joining us for a few minutes. Talking about our game of the week. Again, Sachse and Waco Midway, 7 o'clock at Mansfield Vernon Newsom Stadium Friday night. That's about it from here, and now back to the podcast.
Thanks to Derrick Rose of Sachse for taking the time to chat with Devin as part of our Student Athlete Spotlight, previewing our game of the week, Sachse versus Waco Midway, 7 o'clock Friday out in Mansfield. Vernon Newsom Stadium should be a good one. Obviously, we got 4 other games on the docket to discuss, so let's quick hit those ones, give some predictions, including the game that I will be at on Friday. Allen versus Rockwall, Friday 6 o'clock out at Williams Stadium in Garland. What a savvy move to get this game out in Garland at a stadium that is not exactly Eagle Stadium from a capacity standpoint. I mean, very anxious to see how the Allen crowd handles that.
It's gonna be standing room only.
Yeah, head coach Terry Gamble was very, very emphatic in saying, "Arrive early, Allen." This game is fascinating, you know, to me for 2 reasons. One, I'm always going to be compelled by any matchup that. Any team that's willing to throw on Allen just because of just the nature of the district that Allen is in every year. You just don't see too many pass-heavy offenses outside of Plano East. Rowlett did throw the ball almost 50 times on them, but Rockwall a bit of a different animal when it comes to spreading the ball through the air. For all the credit that the Grant Tisdale Theo East quarterback receiver connection gets, and rightfully so, it's as good as you'll find in the state. Very similar praise needs to be heaped on Jacob Clark and Jackson Smith, which is just an absolute nightmare. I mean, Devin, you covered Rockwall by proxy of being in 11-6A. I mean, I've never seen Jackson Smith or Jacob Clark in person. Just tell me what I'm in store for on Friday.
I mean, it's you talk about 1-2 punches, and it's the best I've seen in the last 2. In fact, I guess it was the second game of last season when Jackson Smith was just a sophomore, so it was just the second game on varsity, and I was already saying he's one of the 5 best players I'll see all year. I mean, he is that kind of talent. Jacob Clark is throwing for 2,848 yards, 29 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. And Jackson Smith, you look at 164 completions. Half of those, 82, are to Jackson Smith, and he goes for over 1,500 yards, 17 touchdowns. He's a force to be reckoned with in the run game. They'll run him on an end around. They'll run him on those screens. He leads the team with 3 interceptions. They will put him in on passing down when other team is passing the ball. He's just such a tremendous athlete, and he's going to be one of those guys that I don't think Allen can guard. I think Rockwall's going to score points in this game. I don't know if it's going to be enough points, though, because slowing down Allen is a whole different matter.
Yeah. Jackson Smith accounts for 55% of their receiving yardage, as you mentioned, 50% of the receptions, and 59% of their receiving touchdowns. He has 17 receiving touchdowns.
See, that concerns me if you're a Rockwall fan, because you can really hone in on a guy that, you know, accounts for so much of the offense, kind of maybe contain him, maybe not shut him down completely, but contain him. Who else is going to step up for Rockwall? And then when you're such a good team like Allen, doesn't bode well for the Yellow Jackets.
They said Belton triple teamed him at times last week.
Sometimes it just doesn't matter.
And he had 7 carries for 182 yards.
But Belton's not Allen, though.
I understand that,
but
there are players that are just so talented that they're going to make a difference no matter what. And I think Rodney Webb is one of the most innovative offensive minds in high school football, Texas high school football, and pretty much any coach will tell you that.
Yeah, a lot of coaches have told me that.
He's going to find a way to get Jackson Smith the ball.
Another reason why I'm fascinated for this matchup is because it's in the second round, and the second round and Allen have been it's been a bit of a checkered history, not in terms of wins and losses, but as far as so I went through and I actually did this this study a ways back, just basically going round by round of the playoffs, Allen's average margin of victory since this golden age of Allen high school football began, which basically the day that Kyler Murray was named the starting quarterback. So going back to the 2012 season when the first of the 3 state championship years happened. So if you're just going to go round by round and just guess Allen's average margin of victory, what would you say has been the easiest round for them in terms of margin of victory?
First round.
Yeah, first round, exactly. Average margin of victory since 2012 in the first round, 36.5 points. Guess what the toughest has been?
Well, I'm assuming the second round.
Second round, Allen's average margin of victory since 2012 has been just 14 points. 14 points, and that number is actually inflated because of a 35-point win that they had over Mesquite Horn in 2013. I mean, mixed in there, you've got, obviously, people remember all too well the games against DeSoto that went right down to the wire, 25-22 on the walk-off field goal back in 2014, and then that crazy one, 42-41, both at AT&T Stadium against the DeSoto team that was like 5-5 after the regular season. They had games against, Belton 24-7, a good, not great performance by Allen. Mesquite back in 2012 went blow for blow with Allen for about 2.5, 3 quarters until Allen pulled away late. And then obviously last year against South Grand Prairie, a game that was 14-14 heading into the fourth quarter. I mean, obviously, being the way that the brackets are laid out and playing that district that has the DeSotos and the South Grand Prairies, that's always been one of the stronger districts in the state. So the second round stands to be a bit of a stumbling block for Allen in terms of finally getting pushed back. So I'm anxious to see if that trend holds. Now, obviously, the one thing in this is Allen has won all of these games, albeit with not the ease that they do in other rounds. Yeah, ironically enough, like Allen's average margin of victory in state championship games, 20.5, is more than their margin of victory in the second round since 2012. Very weird how that works, but yes, nevertheless, the second round has been historically, might indicate that we might get a closer than expected game on Friday. Ultimately, though, I'm obviously still going to go with Allen in this one. And
I'm saying there's now watch Allen probably come out with a defensive chip, or a chip on the shoulder defensively, and hold Rockwall to 10 points or something. But I predict that this game has over 100 points combined scored. Wow. I could easily see something like a 65-41, where Allen wins somewhat comfortably at the end, but they give up their share of points. But I think Rockwall's going to score. I don't think they can stop Allen, though, at all.
So you're saying this is going to be like Monday Night Football, Chiefs, Rams, all over again, but high school version.
Exactly like. Maybe not as close, though.
The picket line was unanimous in this one. Allen gets a 6-0 nod over Rockwall Friday, 7 o'clock out in Garland at Williams Stadium. Let's move on to, Mesquite Horn, the best 4-win team in the state. Horn looking to keep its late season surge afloat. They get to host this one. They square up with Wylie Friday, 4 o'clock out at Mesquite Memorial Stadium. Devin, can the Jaguars keep it going one more round?
I think they can. Yeah. This is a team that has been peaking at the right time, and I think last week in their thrilling 45-38 win over Temple was their best game to date. We talked about Jermaine Givens kind of coming around, with his he's always been able to run the ball, and he led the district in rushing. Last week, though, he throws for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. That was a Jermaine Givens-like game because he also rushed for 220. Over 500 yards of total offense. This is what he did last year when he won the district MVP. He just didn't have the personnel around, and they didn't have that rhythm through the early stage of the season. And their opponents had a lot to do with this as well. But they had not kind of shown that balance that made them so dangerous last year. They hadn't had anybody kind of really step up in the receiving game. Nikausi Emery caught the game-winning touchdown pass, 37 yards with 11 seconds left last week. He's been their most consistent receiver, but he's also had to fill in the backfield because there's been other injuries. Well, Asias Taylor's been back and healthy. He scored a couple touchdowns last week. And again, on top of Givens being 20 to 26, Reagan Nickerson steps up with 6 catches. Jalen Tennyson, Cameron Jackson had a touchdown catch. These guys who had not really made much of an impact on the offense this year, rose to the occasion last week, and it's a hugely encouraging sign for Horn. Going against Wylie, that team that kind of followed a similar path. It wasn't 0-7, but they were 0-4 at one point in time this season. They win 6 of their next 7 games, with the only loss being in overtime to Naaman Forest in a game they probably should have won. And they feature one of my more dynamic dual threat quarterbacks in the area in Rashad Dixon, who I saw them when they played Sachse. I mean, Sachse, as good and as athletic and as fast that Sachse defense is, he gave them fits. He's thrown for 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns, so he's not just a one-trick pony, but it's really on the ground. He's rushed for 947 yards and 16 touchdowns. Last week he goes 151-3. It's just when he picks and chooses his time to run. I would be interested to see how many third down conversions he has with his legs, because he just kind of has this instinctiveness of when to take off, when to stay back and pass. Again, he's not a one-man show. Donovan Ollie is a Washington State pledge who leads the team in receiving. Last week, Caleb McCray and Malik Ford had nice games. So Wiley's a dangerous team. You look at their record, 6-5. Well, against most teams, they're 6-5 against 10-1 against 4-7 Horn. It's not that big of a deal. But I think these are two teams that have saved their best. I mean, Bill Howard, the coach at Wylie, always gets this side of his team. And Horn, under Mike Overton's done the same thing. There's been a lot of Horn teams over the years that have been 5-5, 6-4, kind of limped into the playoffs and then rose, the level of their play. And I think you have two teams that are doing that now. So that one should be competitive, should be high scoring.
Like you, Devin, the rest of the picket line was unanimous on this one. A 6-0 sweep for Mesquite Horn is the prediction for them to advance to the.
Of course, we also picked 6-0 against Wylie last week.
Yeah, well, Wylie might just be. Wylie's not. They've definitely dealt some revenge to the picket line, and
I believe we had 6-0 when Browlette played Wylie as well.
Oh, jeez.
So our track record, we might want to rethink this real quick before we.
Does that make you cautious about your pick at all, Brian?
Nah, not at all.
Let's move on. Yeah, let's talk about some of the games in your neck of the woods, Brian. Some of the fun out in Frisco ISD for the second round. As part of I guess this is the second half of the doubleheader at the Star on Friday, 7:30 p.m. kickoff between Frisco High and South Oak Cliff. Another team that experiences this impressive turnaround this year. Yeah.
How about those Raccoons? I mean, I don't think a lot of people expected what they were going to do to Sulphur Springs in the first round.
No, that was pretty emphatic.
They destroyed them. They did it with the run game. They forced turnovers. Their defense came up with huge fourth down stops. I know I mentioned that a lot on the podcast Monday. And there's not a lot of love for Frisco on the picket line this week. I see that. Spoiler alert, I'm going with Frisco. Everyone else is going with South Oak Cliff. What concerns me, I get it. South Oak Cliff coming in here undefeated, yada, yada, yada. Look who they're playing. It's Dallas ISD. They're playing Jefferson and Seagoville and Spruce.
They beat Red Oak 31-21, and then they went into district, and in 7 games they gave up a total of 14 points with 5 shutouts.
Yeah.
So a little bit of competition, not exactly.
And then they started the year off with Skyline. That was a weird 10-7 game. They haven't played anybody. I don't think they're ready for Frisco's wing tee offense. You can prepare for it, you can gear up for it, but it's hard to stop. And you know what? Haven't seen South Oak Cliff. Haven't seen a second of them play this year, but Frisco's going to win this game. That's my hot take of the week. I feel like I always have one on this podcast.
You know what? And your game may be over in 2 hours.
With all the running.
Because South Oak Cliff, they average 9.4 yards a carry. Now, obviously, they'll be going up against a more formidable defense, but they're a ground-based game. And so that game is going to fly.
Oh, yeah. Frisco maybe throws the ball 4 or 5 times a game, if that.
And South Oak Cliff, apparently, it looks like they throw just enough to keep keep the defense honest, but their bread and butter is on the ground.
Yeah, but I get it. I get why everyone picks South Oak Cliff. They're undefeated, but that'll change this weekend.
Yeah, as Brian alluded to, it was a 5-1 nod in favor of South Oak Cliff over Frisco. Brian on Lone Wolf Island. So let's see, another fun game at Frisco ISD. This one is all the way out in Waco at McLean Stadium near Baylor. Lone Star against Lufkin. This one's Saturday at 2 p.m. kickoff. The Rangers just all sorts of invigorating after the 41-6 pummeling of Mansfield Legacy in the first round. Lufkin's a little bit of a different animal, though. Ranked top 5 in the state. Brian, just talk a bit about this game and kind of what your pick was and just what this one boiled down to for you.
Just like Frisco, I don't think many people expected what Lone Star was going to do to Legacy. Everyone, myself included, thought that one was going to be back and forth down to the wire. They look good. They're peaking right now offensively at the right time. Their defense has been there all year, but now offensively you're looking, 35 points, 63 points, then 41 against Legacy. Those are their last 3 offensive performances. And, Julian Larry's coming in his own. They're getting Marvin Mims the ball more. Marvin Mims, 4-star receiver there. He's got a ton of D1 offers. He was huge in that Legacy win. Lufkin, they're good. Just how good they are, their only loss this year is against Longview, and that was a really close
35-28.
Yeah, 35-28 in week 1. And ever since then, they've just steamrolled everyone. But just like Lone Star, they lost in the regional final of last year, albeit in 6A. Frisco Lone Star last year in 5A. So, both these teams, trying to, get over that hump and avenge that, heartbreaking way they lost in the playoffs last year. And, Legacy, they had 2 defensive linemen that were committed to Arkansas. And they'll face another one. I have his name right here, but they have another defensive lineman committed to Arkansas as well. I don't have his name right in front of me, but so they're getting facing some Arkansas defensive linemen. Their offense is pretty explosive, led by Covante Smallwood with 785 rushing yards. Their quarterback Kawan Thomas has 25 total touchdowns on the year, rushing and throwing. So dual threat guy that you really got to look out for. But Julian Larry, he does the same thing. He leads the team with 26 touchdowns of his own. So, we should be seeing a back and forth battle here. Lone Star's defense, they made Legacy look like a basic offense, which they are not. And so, who knows? Lone Star may be able to stifle what Lufkin brings to the table a bit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I was impressed by the Lone Star result last week. I kind of looked at it. They've averaged 46.8 points per game their last 4, and their previous 5 before that, 14.4.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they were playing some really tough teams, but has the quarterback, has he been the biggest difference? Has that been his development? Has that made the biggest difference?
A little bit, because coming into the season, he'd never played quarterback before. He started at cornerback last year as a sophomore, started every game. He's, star point guard on the basketball team, and then they asked him to, hey, step in the shoes of MJ Rivers and Jason Shelley and be that quarterback. He's very athletic. He's long. He's similar in stature, not as big, as broad as MJ Rivers. But that's tough. For a kid. He's only a junior, but he's really progressed, especially down this home stretch of the year. Darren Smith, senior running back. He's missed chunks of the year early on, and now he's really coming into his own. He's been a key playmaker for this team as a sophomore and junior. And Marvin Mims, he's missed a couple games, missed some time here, but then he's really come on. He's no doubt about their best offensive player, and if you get him the ball, it's danger for opposing teams.
Right, they were impressive last week. I'm taking Lufkin.
Yeah. That being said, this was a 6-0 sweep in favor of Lufkin as the staff favors.
Sorry, Lone Star.
The top 5 ranked. Lufkin. What is it? Panthers.
Yes.
Yeah, Lufkin Panthers to get to the 3rd round.
I won't be all the way out there in Waco, so I don't have to deal with any Lone Star people, giving me smack for not picking them. So I'm gonna stick with my Lufkin.
You'll be back on campus at some point, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I was there the other night.
And that is 5 games, 5 of the biggest games that we have going on in our coverage area for the 2nd round of the high school football playoffs. Let's talk about our coverage plans quickly before we head out. I'm going to be at it, as I mentioned earlier. I'll be out at Williams Stadium on Friday covering Allen versus Rockwall. Brian, you've got a busy week.
Yeah, doubleheader at the Star on Friday. The Reedy Midlothian game is at 3, and then Frisco South Oak Cliff at 7, and then Saturday night I'll be back at the Star for Prosper against Longview. Yikes, that's going to be another tough matchup there.
Devin, how about you?
I'll be out at Mesquite Memorial Stadium to see if Horn can keep their late season surge going as they actually host Wylie, the rare hosting of a second round playoff game.
And once the games are concluded, I should say, first spot you can check out our game stories as well as video highlights. Rapid Reaction Podcast is at our website, starlocalmedia.com, and that will conclude this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Monday to recap the second round and all the fun times that await over these next few days. Folks, happy Thanksgiving to y'all. You guys enjoy the rest of your week, and we will talk to y'all later. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. They deliver more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. Their McKinney office is currently hiring Class A CDL drivers, order selectors, and many other entry and part-time positions. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers, or you can call 214-491-3130. That is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.